Hello, Janginis. Before we get started, Rich and I want to let you in on some even more exciting updates for our Patreon subscribers.
As you know, Patreon is a site where listeners can pledge a small monthly amount, either $5 or $10, to support the cost of bringing you your favorite podcast. All patrons get early access to new CutOff Jeans episodes before they're released to the public.
But the most exciting new perk is that all of our patrons will be able to listen to an exclusive bonus episode of the podcast every other week. Topics include personal stories that I'm not ready to share publicly, conversations with family and friends.
And sometimes we'll devote an entire episode to other subjects we love, like musical theater or classic television.
Rich and I enjoy bringing you the CutOff Jeans podcast, and it would mean so much if you would consider supporting our labor of love.
Just go to patreon.com/cutoffjeanspodcast.
Thank you so much, my Janginis.
And now, on with the show.
Is your family tree a mystery? Are you fascinated by genealogy? Well, hip hip hooray, let's talk DNA with Julie.
The truth is in your genes.
In CutOff Jeans.
Welcome to CutOff Jeans, the podcast that helps you find your truth using nothing but DNA. I'm Julie Dixon Jackson. I'm a genetic genealogy, henceforth known as a Gen Genie.
And I am Richard Castle, the co-host and producer of this podcast. Welcome back to the country, Julie.
Thanks. I'm back.
I'll fill you in before you fill me in.
Okay.
Between the last time we spoke and now, I had the reading of my new musical, and it went really, really well. I'm very happy about that, and so that's exciting.
Was that in Wisconsin?
They did it in Wisconsin, and I zoomed in and listened to it live.
Okay.
And it went really well. So super happy about that, embarking on the next draft of that. And then I just got back from Vegas. We did like a really quick 24-hour trip to go see Lady Gaga. A show called Jazz and Piano, which of course is right up my alley. And it was Lady Gaga performing with a full orchestra.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
She did a mix of like classic jazz tunes, like Lush Life and Luck Be a Lady, and and then she did some of her hits, but like stripped down to her at the piano and then like with strings. It was stunning. Like what a great performer. I was just thrilled.
That's so great. Where was that?
At the Dolby Live in Vegas, like right by the Park MGM. Yeah, we flew in like Sunday and came home Monday. It was literally that turnaround.
That's so great.
It was really fun.
Good. Well, that sounds great. And I'm so excited to hear more about your musical.
Yes, you will in the coming episodes, I'm sure, because things are moving. So, but now that we've gotten me out of the way, I am dying to hear. So for our listeners, Julie has taken a month. I don't want to say sabbatical because it wasn't. It was like it was more like research into future podcasts.
It was literally the epic odyssey to end all epic odysseys. Yes. Although there's no ending to it because I got so many answers, but I have so many more questions.
Yes, right?
Yeah, it was I'm so glad I did as much preparation as I did because it was daunting and I really had to focus on a couple things because there are things that are just not out there unless you really dig.
Right. Where do you want to begin? I mean, you were going to walk in the steps of your ancestors and meet your brother for the first time. Yes.
And also before that, take a cruise.
Well, that too.
Okay. So what I'll do is I'll gloss over the cruise because, that was neither here nor there. It was wonderful. And I had a great time with Betsy. But I flew in a couple days early to London to hang out with Betsy. And also I have a lot of things to see in London that pertain to my family. Sure. So I tried to, nudge a few things into that to get that out of the way ahead of time. And there was actually a church nearby where third great grandparents on my Hausen side, which is on my mother's side, where they were married, and that was their home parish. It was St. Giles of Cripplegate.
Okay. Wow.
And so I haven't really done much research into that side of the family because it appears that my Hausen second great grandfather kind of abandoned his wife like right after they got married. In fact, in researching that, I found her obituary, and it said that she was a young widow, like soon after she was married. But I found him all over the place. In fact, just living a few blocks from her. So I think to avoid the shame of being abandoned by a man, she just said that she was a widow.
Of course, that would be difficult if he kept showing up in the same block or a couple of blocks away.
Yeah, well, I'll never know the whole story, obviously, but it was clear that he was not interested in having a family.
And for clarification, we are talking about your birth mother's side of the family. Are we talking about your
We
adopted?
are always, unless I say otherwise, talking about my birth mother's side, or about my biological family.
Yes. Okay.
Right. So let me see. So I decided on this one afternoon to go find St. Giles of Cripplegate. The first thing that I noticed was that your navigation apps don't work as well as expected in England. So it wasn't sure where I was a lot of the time. So I really had to slow down and let it get its bearings before telling me where to go. It was a little confusing. And also, London is poorly, the streets are poorly marked.
It's a very
I'm just
old
going to say
city.
that. It's a very old city, but they don't have regular street signs. Like if they have a street sign, it's usually on a building, but a lot of times they just don't. So getting that out of the way, that was just something that happened. Anyway, so I decided to take a walk, and we were staying when I first got to London right at a great little hotel right next to St. Paul's Cathedral, and it was walking distance from there. So of course, I followed the GPS as best I could, and I found it took me this crazy roundabout way to it, which from there was actually the only way to it, without having to get into a taxi or something. But it ended up being right next to the Barbican Centre, which is a big theater center.
Okay.
In London, which I thought was, I don't know, interesting. There's just such an incredible mixture of ancient and new, like in concert with each other all over London, which I love.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I got there and I walked past several bits of the original London Wall, just random bits of the London Wall. This is the wall, and of course they're not going to tear it down now because it's history. So they just build around it.
Are they marked?
Usually. It's really clear what it is. And there is actually a walk that you can do to follow all of the relics of the Roman wall in that general area.
Nice.
And there is, right next to the church is a big part of the Roman wall. So I found it. I walked around it. Clearly a very, very old building, obviously. And I walked around it, and of course it was closed. It was slammed shut, so I couldn't get inside. But I took lots of video around it, and I talked. And this was actually my introductory video on TikTok to what I was doing and why I was there.
I see.
So, I did it, but was disappointed I couldn't get in. But so the next day, I went back, and sure enough, there was a service happening. And it was actually a service. There had been a convention that week of organists. So all the people at this service were organists, and the guy on the organ was losing his mind. because he was showing off, I guess. I don't know. But so I walked in, and you can always walk in a church when a service is going on, as long as you don't disturb what's happening. And so while this service was going on, I participated a little bit, but I also walked around and just like looked at the relics and videotaped some of the things. Come to find out that this was Oliver Cromwell's home church. Wow. And there were a lot of disclaimers because there were a lot of relics in his honor there. But they had to post a lot of disclaimers saying, while we don't condone the acts of this person or of certain people, they were still a part of our history here. Right. And so we keep these relics there as part of our history. He was married there, and there's a bust of him there, and a lot of other notaries. This was their home church as well as the marriage place of my third great grandparents. So,
were there any relics there from them?
Not that I know of. I mean, there may have been.
They didn't carve their initials on the wall or anything like that.
They may have, but I never saw it. So at the end of the service, I was still wandering around, and the vicar approached me and asked me why I was there. What brought me there? He obviously noticed I obviously stuck out like a sore thumb, and his name was Father Jack. Mm-hmm. He was delightful. He's in the video, and he's exactly what you think a British vicar is. Like charming, and he kind of reminded me of a cross between Simon Pegg and like he was kind of like elvish. That makes sense. Anyway, he was adorable. I was like, and I actually made remarks on the video that, the fact that he's adorable is not lost on me because he was a complete natural on camera. And I said, he goes, well, why don't I show you around and show you the relics and the things that were here when your third great grandparents were here? And I was like, wow, that would be lovely.
So cool.
Yes. So I videotaped him, and he talked about the church. He talked about when the original building was here, and then it got bombed out. Part of it got obliterated during the Great Fire, and then part of it got obliterated during the World War II.
The Blitz.
Yes, during the Blitzkrieg. Mm-hmm. But the central nave and all of that is still a part of the original. Wow. And then he showed me like up on the altar, there are certain things that have been there for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. Like there's some of the paint from the original, and some of the things were built from like a shack that had been on top of the nearby Roman wall and reused as a part of this church. And the original, what are they called? The instruments used in baptisms and there is like instruments, like silver instruments that are used like to hold the holy water or to give,
I see.
What's it called?
You're asking a Jew. I have no idea.
I know. Communion. Duh. But some of them they're still using the ancient ones, and the ones that they're not using are on display. So there are many things there that were there at the time.
I love that history. I love that. This is the same communion plate that was given to Oliver Cromwell. You're like, oh dear.
Yeah. That's funny. There were also there's a place like it's like a sink almost in the side of the nave. I think that's the word that you can like the body of Christ that you can throw like the extra wafer down, and it goes down into the earth so that the body of Christ is still consecrated.
Oh, that's I don't know. Cool.
I mean, that's a Catholic thing. This is not a Catholic church, but there's a lot of Catholicism mixed with Anglicism.
How cool. I love all that history, Julie. It's so fascinating.
Oh, there's so much more to come. This was just the first that blew my mind, and it was really nice. And he was so delightful and welcoming. In general, the Brits were so welcoming, even though I'm American.
Yeah, right.
Because that's a thing.
I'm sure. So you had a dishy vicar.
I had a dishy vicar. There's a kind of a through line with dishy vicars in British television. There was the hot priest in Fleabag.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So that was the first. That was my first encounter walking in the footsteps of my ancestors. There was a lot more in London, but I saved that for the end because I was going to have 3 or 4 days solo in London. So to just, indulge. And I wanted to spend as much time with Betsy as I could. Because remember, Betsy broke her leg.
Right.
You know this, right? Yes. Betsy broke her leg on her first cruise and was now in a scooter, which was good and bad. I mean, it's never good that somebody breaks their leg.
No.
But we did get a better cabin because it had to be an accessible cabin.
Right.
So it was actually bigger than the one that we would have had, which was nice.
Yeah.
And there were all sorts of accessibility things that were a challenge, but also a bonus. Like when we went to the Royal Albert Hall.
Oh.
We got to take an accessible tour, and I got to go in for free because I was her companion.
I love that. I always think of The Man Who Knew Too Much, the Hitchcock movie with Doris
That
Day.
was the Royal Albert Hall.
Yes.
She sang that so much in that. I got to where I hated that song.
Oh
I'm
my
like,
gosh.
Shut up with the que sera,
No,
Doris.
that's where the murder or the attempted murder is to take place in that Royal Albert Hall.
Yes. I just have this visual of her singing it louder and louder and louder.
Yes, she does. She's trying to alert her son who's been kidnapped to somewhere in some big house. Yes.
Yes.
It's a great film. Great.
It is a great film. I need to watch that again. My husband just went and saw Rear Window for the umpteenth time in the movie theater the other day.
Oh, I love that it was in the movie theater. It's one of my favorite movies.
Yes, it is his favorite movie.
Yeah.
Bottom line.
It's pretty brilliant. But
Yes,
anyway,
it is.
but we digress.
All right, so we ended up in Reykjavik, Iceland.
Okay.
That was where the cruise ended. What is probably no surprise to anybody is that in the middle of the summer in Iceland, it is freezing. I'm like, how do you live like this all year around? Oh. It's so cold. Beautiful, beautiful country. I can't imagine living there.
I think you're lucky because I read that most of Europe was sweltering. A friend of mine went to Italy and she said it was so hot and humid.
Well, it's hot now, but when I was there, it was not.
Yeah.
It never, the entire time I was in Europe, including the UK, it never got over 72 degrees.
Oh, wow. That's nice.
Yeah. Which was great for traveling, certainly. Not so great for swimming.
And of course, Italy is much further south. So
yeah, exactly. Yes, because I was north on the cruise. All right. So I flew from Reykjavik to Manchester where my brother was to pick me up.
Yes.
Now let's talk about my brother. He flew from Melbourne, Australia to London and spent a few days in Oxford with his friends. So they have sister cricket clubs. Mm-hmm. He had forged a relationship between his cricket club and the one there in Oxford. And the reason they forged this relationship is they have a similar name.
Okay.
And so my brother and his friend, who are from the same club, forged a relationship. And it has flourished into a literal relationship between these clubs. And so they travel back and forth and play with each other. They stay at each other's houses.
Nice.
It's lovely. So these friends that he was staying with loaned him their car. And the day that he was to go pick me up, so he was taking the car for like a week because we were wandering around Yorkshire and they were in Oxford.
Right.
So he got in their car, which was a small, economical car, and got 2 miles up the road and the clutch went out.
Oh, no.
It is pouring rain. And he's in his friend's car that they loaned him, and the clutch goes out.
Oh, no. That's so awful.
And he has to get to the airport to pick me up. So he calls his friends. They come out. They're like, oh, yeah, there is definitely something wrong here. Here, take our other car.
Oh, what nice people.
They're so nice. And so they gave him their other car, which is a minivan. much more difficult to maneuver, especially around places like Yorkshire with tiny, tiny, narrow streets and very little parking.
That we're not built for modern minivans. Yeah.
Exactly. So they were kind enough to give him this one, say, don't worry about the other one. Well, not a big deal. So he got there. He got to Manchester, to the airport. Meanwhile, I'm on this plane and I'm coming to the realization that I'm meeting my brother for the first time in person and starting to get kind of emotional about it.
Oh.
And I'm sitting there, and for some reason, what gets me through long flights is, even though this was only a couple hours, but is music that I love. And there is an Australian singer that has been around since I was a baby named John Farnham. And he's had an amazing career. I consider him to be the greatest singer that's ever come out of Australia. And he has this live album that was recorded in the 80s that, to me, is one of the greatest recordings ever. And it came up on my phone. And what's weird is I hadn't been able to find it for a few years on my phone. It was weird, but it was there. And so I listened to it, and every song has such deep meaning to me and obviously I was already in kind of an emotional place, like things are all coming together for me, and this is my history, and I listened to it and I got more and more emotional as I was listening to it. So as we started circling Manchester, I turned to the man next to me and I said, so is this home for you? And he said, yeah, this is home. Well, nearby. And I said, well, where is home? And he said, Cheshire, Wallasey in Cheshire. I'm like, oh, I have family in Wallasey. I'm going to Wallasey at some point. And then the people on the other side of the aisle said, we're from Wallasey too. And so I proceeded to tell the story to them about why I was there. I was meeting my brother and the whole background to it. Then the people in front, like at the end of the story, the people in front of us turned around and said, what a lovely story. So I had all these people around me kind of rooting for me, saying, isn't that lovely? It made it really special.
It sounds like a musical. Like suddenly you start singing the tale and everyone's listening. Or you could have just pressed play on your podcast.
I could have. I think I did hand out some cards that day.
It probably wouldn't have been as sweet if you just said, I'll just send you the link.
Yeah, exactly.
I think, so you landed and you were about to meet your brother, but I think we should take a break and let everybody kind of digest that. And when we come back, we'll tell the rest of that.
All right.
If you're enjoying our podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review, or consider supporting us on our Patreon page, patreon.com/CutOff Jeans Podcast. Now back to Julie and me.
All right, we're back. Are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Here
ready.
we go. All right, I'm in Manchester. I have to go through customs because I came from a different country, obviously.
Yes.
So there's that whole thing. By the way, going through customs in England is freakishly simple if you have an American passport.
Oh, nice.
You literally, I didn't even have to see anybody. I literally put my passport in a machine and it let me through. Nobody had to go through my luggage, nothing. It was weird. Wow. So I got to, with my ridiculously heavy suitcase, we can talk about that another time. So the anticipation was here I was going to, and of course it was international. So I had to go through a special door to go out there with my bags. And there's a circle of people around there. So right in the middle in front is my brother standing there with a sign that says Big Sis.
Oh.
And he's got a t-shirt that says Little Bro.
It's cute. And it's so thoughtful.
So he had this, and so I was like, I laughed, and it was lovely, and we embraced, and I didn't get any of that on video because I just thought it would be really impersonal and weird to hold up to be videotaping.
I agree. I agree.
Yes, but as we got ourselves situated, then we went outside and we had someone take a picture of us. So I think everybody on the Facebook page has seen the picture of us right after we met and we're holding up the sign.
I saw it. It was very, very sweet. And,
yes.
And I was really moved by it because I know how long this was in coming and that you guys had planned to meet when the pandemic hit.
3 years
right
ago.
Before. Yeah. So, and of course, even when you think about it, you go back even further, because how many years before that had you connected with him?
Right. It was 2016.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's been a long time coming.
Yeah. And what a special way to do it, where you both meet in basically where your relatives are all from, your common relatives. It's
exactly.
Just really lovely. So.
It was. And, just the fact that he was so willing to come along on this journey with me is so touching.
Yes.
And truth be told, I could not have done this without him. I learned very fast how difficult it is to maneuver around some of those places up there. And, I can't drive there.
Oh, on the wrong side of the street?
Yes, the other side of the street.
The other side.
Yes.
I shouldn't say wrong. That's judgmental.
Yes.
Oh, what an ugly American I am.
So, yeah, I don't feel comfortable driving there. And what was I thinking way before he was coming with me as to how I was going to get around? Was I just going to take taxis everywhere? It would have been so frustrating and overwhelming.
It would have been a very different trip.
It would have been a very different trip. Absolutely.
And just to have someone there to share it with who is as into it as you, because he has a stake in it, in that it is his history as well.
Yes.
I just have one more question, because this is a big deal.
All right.
That you met Rob. I mean, I know that you've spoken on the phone and that you've done video chats, so it wasn't like you've never seen him before. But it's different when you meet someone in person. And how was it different for you, or not different? What was it like to meet him and not just meet him, but be with him in person? How did that feel?
It was, okay, so whenever something like that happens, something really significant happens in my life, in the moment, I don't really process it.
Sure.
You know what I mean? I take it. So it wasn't like, oh my God, I'm sitting here with my brother.
Right.
And oh my God, and do we look alike? Blah, blah, blah. But yes, it was, in hindsight, it was profound, and we felt immediately comfortable with each other.
Nice.
I think it took a little getting used to each other's maybe sense of humor. I guess. But he's so easygoing. And I will say this about Rob Fisher. Of all the people I've met in my life, he is the one that lives to serve others more than anybody. He is such an empathetic person and just wants other people to be comfortable and have a good experience with him. And that's nice. Without being disingenuous. I mean, that is who he is. And so it was just very early on. Plus, my thing is, making jokes about everything. And he has a really good sense of humor about it. And I caught a lot of it on video, which I loved. And I also love the way because I videotaped him a lot, because instead of putting me in there, I would put him in there, and always preface it by saying Rob Fisher. Like, I don't call him Rob, I call him Rob Fisher. I call him Rob, but if I'm introducing him, it's always Rob Fisher. Rob Fisher doing this, and the way he would react to the camera was so charming. And he's the biggest difference between us, he says, is that he is not necessarily comfortable being the center of attention. But except for he does public speaking a lot, because he is a manager in a lot of areas, and he's very much a leader. And so he is comfortable with it when he is talking about something that he's very knowledgeable about. But he is so natural on camera, and also just so quick to react, and so fun to work with on camera. You know what I mean? He's on it. So, so a lot of the stuff that I caught of him on camera was so great, because him laughing, there was one, I don't know if you've seen the video of the first day there, when I was like, well, we're lost, but look at this. Because we got lost so many times that first day. And you can hear him laughing, a real reaction in the background of laughing that just warms my heart, because he gets me.
Yeah.
And he's a good sport about everything. His biggest concern, he was a little anxious because he was driving somebody else's car.
Oh, I get that.
And he was, in fact, we almost got taken out by a car that just pulled out in front of us. And like literally an hour after we met. And it was terrifying because he was so freaked out about damaging his friend's car. So we're heading to the Old Bell Inn. Now, these are, I booked all of the hotels for us based just on what I thought looked charming. And as this was the first place that I booked, and it wasn't until I started booking other places that I realized I should, that I realized that I should book places with elevators because I knew I was going to have a big, heavy suitcase.
Oh,
So this one did not have an elevator, and we were on the second floor. Thank God Rob Fisher was there to drag my suitcase up the stairs. This was another like 17th century inn that had wonderful food, an incredible selection of gin. Gin is a big deal in England, by the way. I don't know if you knew that.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's the Beefeater, right? I mean, that's the character on the Beefeater gin.
Well, that is the one. But now it's all, like all different kinds of gin.
Is that so? Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never been a gin person. I prefer vodka.
I actually love gin.
Do you?
But yeah, they are known for their gin selection, whatever. Anyway, but we had wonderful meals there. The people were so kind. So these old pubs that have rooms upstairs are always just so quaint. And there's only like 4 or 5 rooms in each one. And thankfully we got 2 rooms next to each other. Mine had a bathtub, which was, mwah. I was so excited about that. Just charming little rooms. Also I need to explain about the way Yorkshire people greet you.
Okay.
Here's the Yorkshire way of saying hello. Here's the American way of saying hello. Hello, how are you? How can I help you? Here's how Yorkshire people say hello. Yawright. So cute. Yawright. So they're basically saying, are you all right? Which, of course, my instinct is to say, I'm fine. Do I not seem all right? So it became like my favorite greeting for everyone. And I just kept saying it like in the car with Rob. And he would always say, I'm fine. Thank you for asking. It was our little joke. But yeah, right. That's my favorite Yorkshire thing. I love the people in Yorkshire, except for one. And I'm going to tell you about him.
You're going to tell me about the one person that you hated.
Yes, I am, because that is my way. All right. So we had a lovely lunch. Then we decided to head off to Diggle, which is basically the home of the Fishers. The Fishers that I've been able to trace the furthest back were in Diggle. That is our 4th great grandparents ran the Tunnel End Tavern in Diggle.
Okay.
And all of my records had them firmly entrenched in Diggle. I just like saying Diggle, by the way. All right. So the GPS sent us, this was the first of many strange paths to places that we went on. And the GPS sent us down something called Carr Lane, Carr. And it was this very narrow road that just didn't seem like a full-size car should ever go down. And it was just bumpy, and there were just, old properties on either side. There's no addresses ever anywhere.
Wow.
And so and he was very nervous because it just didn't seem like it was taking us anywhere. And we kept thinking this can't be it. So we'd go back up and there was this hairpin turn at the top. And we'd try to take another way and it would reroute us back to that way.
Mm.
So we ended up taking it. Anyway, we finally got to Diggle. And we parked, and the goal was to go to the Diggle Hotel, which is the pub that is closest to the end of the tunnel in Diggle.
Okay.
Hence the Tunnel End Tavern, and see if we could find more information out about it. The Diggle, so you go across this bridge, across the canal, and it's this charming hotel, like it's from the 16th century. Sitting there, just how you expect a country English pub to look. Just gorgeous. So we go in and there's a very young bartender there, a young lady. And I said, "You're very young. You probably can't help us, but I wonder if there's anyone around here who might be able to enlighten us as to the location of a tavern that was in our family many, many years ago."
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "Well, maybe Billy can help you." Billy was this guy sitting at the bar with two other people, just bellied up to the bar at 3:00 in the afternoon. And so I asked him, and I go up to him, and he's an immense presence, this person.
Okay.
Like he has a presence about him that you're like, he kind of commands a room or something. I don't know. It was interesting. But I said, I'm wondering if you know the site of the Tunnel End Tavern. And before I could continue, he said, "Oh, it's over in Marsden." And I said, No, not that Tunnel End Tavern. That was there right up until COVID, and it was a modern place. Okay. And they called it the Tunnel End Tavern because that's also a tunnel end. But this Tunnel End Tavern was in the 1850s, and it was in Diggle. He said, "No, it wasn't. Never happened."
Oh.
And I said, "Excuse me?" And he said, "No, it never, you're wrong." I said, "Well, I'm not wrong." I mean, how would you know? And he goes, "Because I've lived here all my life."
Well, since 1850.
That was a really bad. Yeah, I'm like, "How old are you, sir?" He was just so dismissive. And I said, "No, I actually have the records. I'm a genealogist, and I have the records that prove that it was in Diggle, and it was called the Tunnel End Tavern. It was near the tunnel end, like maybe right here."
Right.
And he said, "No, you're wrong." And I said, "Well, maybe I'll pull up the records and show you." And he said, "Oh, don't bore me with that."
Oh boy.
He was so rude. I met my brother 2 hours earlier, and he sees me triggered.
Yeah.
That soon. And I was like, "Oh no, this is not good."
Well, obviously Billy at the bar was not the person to talk to about the town and Tunnel and what is it called? The
Tunnel End Tavern.
Tunnel End Tavern.
Right. But so he was just very dismissive. And of course I'd walked around a little bit and looked at some of the maps to see if I could find anything, any of the old maps. Then I went outside and I pulled up my ancestry tree and I pulled up the documents. There's a book that I bought years ago called Saddleworth Pubs, and it has a whole write-up about the Tunnel End Tavern in Diggle, ran by John Fisher and his wife. That is my fourth great grandparents. And then also I got the census from those times, and it said Tunnel End Tavern, Diggle.
Yeah. Clearly,
it's not made up. I don't know where it is, but it's not made up. It didn't not happen.
Right.
So I came back in, and I said, let me just show you this. This is blah, blah, blah. And I showed it to him. And then he looks at me and he goes, "Congratulations."
Maybe he was a little drunk. Was he drunk?
Oh, likely. Of course, I immediately, after I figured out who he was, I did some deep research. And yes, he's a drunk. Oh, well. Anyway.
Well, what do you mean? What do you do? Genealogical research and find out, oh, that's Billy the drunk from Diggle.
No, Billy the bully is what I like to call him. He was. So we, at that point, left. I'm like, this is not pleasant. So we left, and I was videotaping, we went down to the canal to walk along the canal. And even in the videotape, you can hear me like, I'm so pissed off that he was so rude. And he was the first person that I met. And for me, it's, this is something I've been working on for a solid 8 years.
Right.
Or 7 years. And for him to dismiss me, even though who cares? Right. But there was something about, I had a feeling that it was actually that building. And and he said, "Well, this has been here since the 16th century. I'm like, "Yeah, but it wasn't always, you haven't been here since the 16th century. Do you know everybody who's ever owned it?"
Right.
He was just, anyway, it was such a nasty confrontation that really put a bad taste in my mouth.
Oh, that's
so I kind of had to work through that and talk to my brother about things that trigger me. And he was very understanding, and he agreed that the guy was so out of line and dismissive. So Anyway, so we walked, we spent the rest of the afternoon walking along the canal, which is so beautiful.
Did you find out where the tavern was that you're...
I did.
Okay.
The next day we went to another pub that is still open that was in our family called the Navigation Inn. And we went there to have lunch, and we walked there we did a beautiful nature walk beforehand. That if you're on my TikTok, guys, get on my TikTok, because that's where all of that's the easiest way to show the footage and to narrate what is going on.
Okay.
We went to the Navigation Inn and sat down, and our waitress came over, and I said, we're here walking in the footsteps of our ancestors, as I told everybody. And I said, and one of our ancestors actually was a proprietor here in the early 1900s. And she's like, oh, how lovely. I'm like, are you the owner? And said, no, I'm just a waitress, blah, blah, blah. And she goes, oh, so when he was here, the door was there instead of over there. And I said, what do you mean? She said, well, there was an accident in a cart or something came through the side of the wall of the hotel. And so they had to change the layout a little bit. Anyway, so she was telling us, and she was really into it. We had the most divine lamb lunch I've ever had. I did have a lot of great lamb. I love lamb. And then as we were leaving, the owner was there. And so I said, are you the owner? We actually have a family member that was also an owner here at the turn of the last century. And she said, oh, stay here just a minute. And she went and she brought out this document, this framed document that lists everyone who has ever been a proprietor there.
Oh, how cool.
Since its inception.
Wow.
And sure enough, 1900 to 1902 is Franklin Fisher. I said, how lovely that you have this. Thank you so much. And she said, you know what? I'm going to get a new one of these. Why don't I send the original to you when I get the new one? So she got my address and she's going to send me she was so divine. And I said, thank you for being so kind and indulging, because we were at the Diggle Tavern. The Diggle Hotel, and had a very different experience. Yeah. And I proceeded to tell her we're looking for the Tunnel End Tavern, which was earlier, which is in the 1850s. And I went there to find out if they knew where it had been. And she said, it was there. Everybody knows that's where it was. I said, what? Billy told us it was not, and it had never been there. And she said, Billy doesn't know what he's talking about.
So you mean that I'm trying to follow you here. They moved it because she had the...
Tunnel End.
Oh, the tunnel. Yeah. Okay.
The navigation has always been there.
Yeah.
The Tunnel End was what is now the Diggle Hotel.
I see. Okay.
And the building has been there since the 16th or 17th century. Okay. So it was in there, and he was just the proprietor of the first ale house. In fact, if you go to the book that I have about Saddleworth hotels, the Diggle Hotel is also in there.
Okay.
And what is written about the Tunnel End Tavern says that it is last heard of in like the mid 1850s.
Okay.
And then you go to the Diggle Hotel, and it says up until 1858, the Diggle Hotel, this property only had an alehouse license. And so then it became a fully licensed pub in 1858. So that is once again confirming that it was an alehouse. Which was the Tunnel End Tavern.
Billy the drunk was actually was drinking in the place that was owned at one time by your relatives.
He is in the building that is a hotel that literally our oldest known ancestors inhabited. So I would have loved to spend a lot of time there. Yeah. I would have loved to go upstairs and look at the rooms and imagine my family there, because I had a lot of family that lived there during that time. Yeah. So it really sucks that I never got to, because I had such a bad taste in my mouth and I didn't want to go get abused by that guy again.
But how nice that you found someone who could confirm, and confirm everything that you knew.
Yes. And she was not the only one.
And she had evidence, she had that evidence, which is wonderful. So,
well, she didn't really have evidence of that, but I found evidence of it later. And she, everybody, everybody assumes.
She had a list of all the proprietors.
No, she had a list of all the proprietors of the navigation.
Oh, okay.
that was different.
Yeah.
That was Franklin Fisher was a grandson.
I see.
Of our fourth. So he was a first cousin.
There's a lot of Fishers here.
Removed. So many. It's very fishy. So fishy. Yeah.
I think we should end here for today.
Yes, we should.
Okay. And we'll continue more of this Odyssey next time.
All right.
Great.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Oh, no. Yes. Thank you, everybody.
And thank you, Richard, for listening.
I am Richard Castle, and you can find out more about what I do on the web at richardcastle.com. You can follow me on, I guess it's called X and not Twitter, at Castle Songs, although I have not posted there in many, many, many months. You can also find me on Instagram at Castle Songs. And
did you go to Threads?
I have not gone to Threads yet. I
have, but I don't really use it.
I haven't had the time to start up something new. I've been busy
you.
with other things. There's also, my Love Stings website for my musical is live. You can go there and look.
Good.
And you can actually stream the original cast album on Spotify and on YouTube Music and Amazon Music.
That's great.
And you can find those links on lovestingsmusical.com.
Boom. All right. I am Julie Dixon Jackson. Thank you for your patience while I was away. You can find everything Julie Dixon Jackson at cutoffjeans.com. You can hire me to work on your case. If you are so inclined, please join my TikTok page because that is the best way to get all of the information and all the information about my trip, my epic odyssey. And as always, the truth is in your jeans.